All right, Herb. Do you want to kind of discuss, uh, like maybe your political views out, or are you're not conservative, right? You're liberal,
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a conservative. I mean, in short, my political views are that it is bad to kill people, and the government should both not kill people and not allow people to kill other people. And so, in some contexts, that makes me a conservative, and in some contexts, that makes me a liberal.
right? On so maybe more independent, or depending
Yeah,
on the situation,
yeah, I've been registered a Republican. So I live in Pennsylvania, and I
right? On.
completely unapologetically switch back and forth to vote in certain primaries. Like I wanted to vote against Trump in 2016 in the Republican primary, and then I lived in a city, so I wanted to vote for a better prosecutor, so I switched to Democrat. I think I'm still registered as a Democrat now,
Right
but
on.
I have no love for either of the parties.
That's fair. I get that. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what I thought. I guess maybe we can start off there then. I know that you were one of the few people that didn't want your pardon. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Because you're trying to appeal, right? It wasn't
yeah.
so much that had nothing to do with who it was from.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some element of I don't want to ask Donald Trump for anything, but
I get it.
at the same time, I'm not gonna act like I'm too liberal to get out of prison, right? I,
No, I get
I
that.
and I can certainly appreciate the good things that Trump has done in
Right
his
on.
first term and what he's done now. But it, primarily, I was attempting to reject the pardon because I want to preserve my right to appeal the original conviction.
You're still, I assume, still trying to go through that process.
Yeah, yeah. I was just talking to my lawyer yesterday about it. They're still working on it. The pardon makes our case a little less strong, but there's still precedent that we can move forward, and I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to move forward and actually get this law overturned rather than just not enforced or pardoned if you break it.
So you're more trying to change the actual law as opposed to cleaning your record, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm less concerned with whether or not I'm a felon. Obviously, it's nice to not be, but
Yeah.
it would be nice to not be. But uh, ultimately, I think that there's this law that I don't think. I mean, who knows? But I don't think Trump's going to be president forever, and I don't think that this unconstitutional law that targets a particular type of protest based on the message is constitutional. And I think it certainly will be used in the future by a future administration to target pro-life free speech at abortion clinics.
Right on. If you don't mind me asking, what got you into pro life?
I don't really have a great like conversion story. This made me pro-life or anything. In truth, I just sort of was developing my political opinions as a teenager. I was like on Tumblr, in like
Right on.
2012. And so I was definitely like vaguely left leaning. I certainly did and still support LGBT rights. I would have called myself a feminist and still would. And so when it came to abortion, I just was kind of default pro-choice or pro-abortion. If pro-choice means supporting women's rights, then I support women's rights. So I'm pro-choice. But at the same time, I already opposed things like the death penalty. I was deeply concerned about U.S. foreign policy in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I kind of had just a general inclination towards nonviolence. And so when I was sort of developing my political positions on things and talking to people and becoming an adult, right? I remember you want to be able to defend your position. So on something like the death penalty, it's so easy to Google search, why should I oppose the death penalty? And there's a million resources that come up with great statistics that I feel like prove me right. And it's like easy to argue. So this doesn't hurt. And then when I tried to do that with abortion, I just remember, I initially I go to Planned Parenthood's website, I look at pro-choice sources, and I remember just getting this like sickening feeling, like I feel like we're talking around something here. Like it feels like we're kind of talking around the fact that this is killing a baby, or like that it seemed ridiculous to me to totally discount the opposition's view that there is something here that's worth moral consideration. And so from that point on, I just sort of started looking at more neutral sources, just simply the science, like a biology textbook that makes it clear that human life begins at conception or fertilization. And I sort of felt if I had this belief that, it's wrong to kill human beings, there there wasn't really a distinction other than conception where an embryonic or fetal human being becomes a person. We are the same people we are from that beginning. And so there's no way for me to delineate why a human being in the womb doesn't deserve the right to life that a human being, outside the womb, whether they're a child or an adult, wherever, deserves the right to life. And when you look into what actually happens during an abortion, I think that there's this conception that it just makes someone not pregnant anymore. Like it's almost a form of birth control, which I have no issue with. But that's not what abortion is. Abortion doesn't just make someone not pregnant anymore. It does that by violently ending the life of a human being through either suffocation, dismemberment, or poisoning. Like this is not a simple, just easy procedure like taking a Tylenol and no one gets hurt and then you don't have to be pregnant anymore. It's violence against a human being, and that just did not align with the beliefs that I held on everything else, right? If I'm going to be someone who's anti-war, anti-death penalty, who opposes violence, why would I support violence against the most innocent, most vulnerable, defenseless human beings, the unborn?
Do you take a hard stance against all abortion, or are you okay with rape and incest kind of stuff?
So yeah, I oppose child killing in all circumstances. I don't care how old they are, where they are, or why they came into existence, or any circumstance, unless maybe that child's really aggressing upon you. Like maybe that's a circumstance. But in general, whether you're in the womb or not, however you were conceived, you are a human being. I know people who have been conceived in rape, and I know people who have conceived in rape and love their children. And when you look at a child, whether they're an embryo or a newborn or a person as an adult, you have no idea how they were conceived. And however that was, their right to life should not be dependent on the sins of their father. So I oppose abortion in all circumstances. I oppose elective abortion in all circumstances. There are certain very vanishingly rare circumstances where a child may need to be delivered early to actually save the life of the pregnant person, but that almost never happens, and pro-life laws are written to reflect the fact that that needs to happen sometimes, or in cases like ectopic pregnancies, the embryo needs to be removed so that the woman does not get dangerously ill or die. That is not what I'm talking about when I say abortion. I'm talking about elective abortions.
Right on. You're still secular, correct?
Yeah. I just last week started a job with Secular Pro-Life, an anti-abortion organization that exists to mobilize atheists and agnostics and really just any kind of non-traditional pro-lifer.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of a rare thing, right? I mean, does the community accept you pretty well, or do you have a hard time fitting in?
Which community? The secular community or the pro-life community?
Well, like the pro-life community.
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's
traditional pro-life, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. I would say, it depends. There's certainly some people who, either take issue with me, or maybe they take issue with my politics, or they take issue with my identity, or whatever. But for the most part, I find that people who are really, in my experience, doing the work to end abortion and to help pregnant people and save lives of babies in action, they are willing and excited to work with anyone because they recognize that this is a human rights atrocity. And, you don't card people on their church affiliation when you're working to end human trafficking. Why would you do that on
Right.
abortion. That said, there's certainly, psychos everywhere who don't even, they're not interested in saving lives. They're only interested in saving souls. So they need to proselytize to me. But I find that for the most part, overwhelmingly, people are excited to work with anyone willing to put in the work to save lives and help women in crisis pregnancies.
Right on. How active were you in the protesting prior to the event that they charged you with in October of 2020?
Yeah, I'm pretty active. I am kind of a mainstay outside of abortion clinics. Usually not protesting per se, really just being there and offering resources to women and families going in, letting them know that there is a community here willing to help them with whatever they need. I'm going to plug Let Them Live. That's like always my go-to organization. They are, I think, some of the most impressive people out there, like really doing the work. When a woman says, listen, I want to keep this baby, but I'm being pressured to abort. I don't have stable housing. I don't have stable healthcare. They are willing to step up and give it to them and figure out what it takes to make that woman feel as though she is supported enough to choose life. So that's really what I'm doing out there most of the time. Every once in a while, I'll protest too. And I certainly protest outside the Supreme Court and, for legislative reasons. But what we were doing that we actually got charged with, so you can call it a protest, you can call it a sit-in, you can call it whatever you want. We call it a rescue. It was these sort of actions started taking place in the 80s and 90s, mostly with Operation Rescue, but also with a lot of independent folks who believed that abortion is murder and felt as though we should act like that if we're going to say it. And so what we were doing then was actually physically interposing and putting our bodies between the killer and the victim, so that the longer we were in there, we were doing a nonviolent sit-in in the abortion clinic and directly outside the abortion clinic, that when pro-lifers are doing that, babies are not being killed. Women are walking away, and we are giving people as much time as possible to reconsider their options.
That got broken, or did you get arrested that day? Right? They didn't come
So,
get you.
most of my co-defendants did. I got away. I was doing some other work that day. Like I was talking to the women going in, right? And so I wasn't actually at any point like blocking the clinic door, and so they didn't arrest me for it. Like 2 years later, they came and hit me with a superseding indictment. They charged everyone who did get arrested that day, and then they took the time to do a superseding indictment just to add me.
Right on.
They had to, the grand jury met on my birthday. I saw that in the documents and I was like, that's so rude. You wasted all those resources just to add me to this indictment that already had like 10 other people.
Right.
So I wasn't even arrested that day. And really, I believe that the FACE Act is unconstitutional. And I believe that those who do violate the FACE Act are not doing anything as long as it's a nonviolent rescue or protest. That I don't think they're doing anything wrong, and I don't think what they should be doing should be illegal. But that said, I barely even violated the FACE Act that day. I really think I didn't. At no point was I actually obstructing people from entering the clinic. But that said, I think people have a right to obstruct people from killing babies. So I'm not ashamed of the accusation that I did more than I actually did to save babies.
I get it. Would you do it again if you could go back in time, or would you avoid it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, I'm always willing to do whatever I can in that moment to save a life. And so I think, yeah, I can't imagine. I don't believe that I did anything wrong. I don't believe the people who I was with did anything wrong. I think that we were there trying to save lives and save women from the trauma of abortion. And so I wouldn't say that I regret it. And yeah, I'd probably do it again. I didn't love being locked up for it, but
Right.
yeah, but also we know that people turned away that day, and we know that there are like people alive now who were scheduled to die. And when a rescue happened, their mother chose life. And so like on this charge, because I got pardoned, I only ended up losing a year and a half of my life. if that is in exchange for someone who now gets to live 70, 80 years of their life, or even multiple people, because their mother did not go through with an abortion that day, like it's hard to even quantify it being worth it or not, because it's what's 1 year or a couple of years compared to someone's entire life that was about to be ripped away from them.
Right. How were you treated? How was your prison experience?
It sucked. I don't think.
Well, I imagine, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I gotta go to therapy. I have not like coped with it at all. It definitely traumatizing. I'm looking for a therapist, so if anyone has Rex, let me know.
Right on.
But I mean, I'm fine. Like, what I always came back to is that whatever the government was going to do to me, it is nothing compared to what they allow the abortionists to do to the real victims. And so, like, I can whine and cry about how tough it was, and it was tough, and I love to whine and cry. But at the end of the day, like, I am not the victim here. The victims are the unborn babies who are actually being killed, and their mothers who are being sold this lie that they need abortion, when that is just not the case. There are resources out there. There are opportunities for you to have whatever it is you need that is causing you to think that this is your only option. And so it was tough. It sucked. Being incarcerated is horrible. Like I went, I'm vaguely liberal, and I am very sympathetic even before I was involved in the justice system to prison abolition and to criminal justice reform at the very least. And so, I knew it wasn't going to be easy going in, but at the same time, again, it is nothing compared to what we're up against, which is extreme violence against human beings and lethal violence against human beings. I didn't get the death penalty. That's what these babies get every day.
Did they have you sentenced to 11 years, right? Or was it?
No, so I was facing up to 11 years.
Right on.
But that was if, they gave me the max. But this was, again, a first time nonviolent offense. I'd been arrested a couple times for nonviolent civil disobedience, but never on serious charges or never any felonies. But so my sentence ended up being a little over 2 years. And so if I didn't get pardoned, they wouldn't have kept me longer than, I think, November of this year would have been my release date. So it's nice to get that whole year
Right.
back. But,
yeah.
Thankfully, no. I think my co-defendant, Lauren, she had the longest sentence of any of us. They were real mad at her. She got a little bit over 5 years. For doing the same thing, again, nonviolent protests, like a sit-in. Like, I have been involved in sit-ins. Like, I'm also like a psycho vegan activist, and I've been involved in nonviolent direct action on behalf of that issue, and others, and for the death penalty and other things that I believe in. And when you do nonviolent direct action on any other issue, what you're facing is trespassing at worst, maybe blocking ingress and egress. It is a slap on the wrist. But when it is at an abortion clinic, particularly at a late term abortion clinic in Washington, D.C., they feel the need to throw the full weight of the government against you for what is essentially free speech activity. And it's tough. So I only got 27 months, a little over 2 years. But my co-defendant, she thank God Trump pardoned her, because she was going to be in there for the next 5 years.
Jeez.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Were you in prison with any J6ers that you know of?
I was, yeah.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and they're cool, right? Much love to them, but yeah, I mean, so honestly, I spent a whole lot of time locked down. Honestly, I was transferred with a bunch of J6ers. I think when I was in the DC jail for a while, where for the most part I was locked down like 24 hours a day, so I hardly spoke to anyone there.
Right
But then when I was transferred from there to the federal prison they kept me at for the few months I was there, I was with a couple of J6ers, so they're cool, but. Yeah.
I mean, you're a little different, probably political view wise, right? From them
Yeah.
guys for the most part.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, hey,
Yeah,
political prisoner is a political prisoner.
Yeah.
If I was in there with, environmentalist political prisoners, I would have loved them too. I
hear you.
I wasn't at January 6th, and I wouldn't have been, but
right.
I can also recognize when there's extreme overcharging based on, political animus in the Justice Department.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Do you plan on going back to the protest circuit soon?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, literally the day that I was released, I went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. and met
Oh,
up with,
right on.
a couple 100,000 anti-abortion activists. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm still in it. I just took this job with Secular Pro-Life. And my plan there is to help mobilize more people like me, people who don't feel like they have, a space in the traditional pro-life movement, but are passionate about ending this form of violence. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help mobilize people to do whatever they can. And I recognize that for a whole lot of people, risking arrest and physically interposing in abortion is not an option for them. If you have kids that you are the sole caretaker for, like, I really probably wouldn't recommend taking that action. But I do think that if you believe that abortion is murder, you probably should be doing more to stop it. And maybe for you, your capacity right now is donating and sharing memes online about the right to life. That's a pretty low level that most of us can do. But if you can, get outside on the sidewalk and lawfully hand out literature and offer help to women going into abortion clinics. Get involved in the political process. There are a million things you can do to be involved that may or may not involve getting arrested if you want to take that risk. But the vast majority of people have the ability to do more than they're already doing. And I want to help encourage them to do that and mobilize them and get them connected so that they can do that.
Is this Secular Pro Life? It's an organization, right?
Yeah. It's
Is it just an online thing, or is there like offices in different cities, or?
we're primarily online, but we are real people that exist. We typically, again, I literally just started last week, but I've been working with some of those folks for years, and I've been like a fan of their work. I remember back, like I said, I kind of looked into abortion when I was developing my political opinions. One of the first things I Googled was like, can you be an atheist and pro-life?
Right.
Because that representation was not there. Now it is more because of activists like Teresa Bukovac and Monica Snyder, who are very loud atheist women against abortion. And so I've been following them for years. But yeah, Secular Pro-Life, they do a lot of work online, helping people craft their arguments against abortion and creating a space for non-traditional pro-lifers. But part of the plan for me coming on board is to bring that into the real world and bring my experience with activism to that organization and to the pro-life movement, because there are pro-life activists and they are overwhelmingly Christian, which is great. I want Christians out there doing whatever they can. But we also know that there are millions of atheists who are pro-life. Just according to the Pew and Gallup polls, they ask people, what's your religious affiliation and what is your stance on abortion, pro-life or pro-choice? And it's true that the majority of atheist agnostics and people who mark none under religion do support abortion. But just statistically, there's a percentage that do not, that call themselves pro-life. And when you do the math, it equals millions of Americans who are atheist and pro-life, but that's not reflected in the mainstream pro-life movement. And so my goal is to mobilize them and bring them from, just saying I'm uncomfortable with abortion to doing something about it. Because why are you uncomfortable with abortion? Is it because it's something that you don't care for, or is it because it's killing babies? If it's killing babies, I think we should do something about it, not just believe in it.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Is there any like main message you hope your story spreads to the world?
I mean, I think can I curse?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think my main message is that if you believe abortion is murder, you should fucking act like it. If there was a store in your neighborhood where you can walk into and have them execute your 2-year-old child, I don't think that most people would be comfortable just saying, I'm against that. I'm against toddler murder. I think every 4 years I'm going to vote for a Republican and hope that they do something about it. And then when you do vote for a Republican, almost nothing changes. I would like to think that if there was a toddler murder store in your neighborhood, you would be out there doing something. At the very least, offering the people who go in, hey, I'll take the toddler if you don't want them. But more importantly, in the context of abortion, that's offering them the resources that they need to be able to raise that child. And so I think, you know, if there was a toddler murder store, I would be physically blocking the door to enter that clinic. And I think that if that's how you feel about unborn babies, if you believe that they have the same moral worth as a 2-year-old or as a 10-year-old or as an adult, then think about what you're doing and if you can do more.
Right on.
And if you don't believe abortion is murder, then you should change your mind. You know, if you're pro-abortion, then you're wrong. Go on secularprolife.org and read our arguments for why that's the case. You know, I can get into that, but I think that I'm less into debating about abortion and more into doing something about it.
Is that the group you would say you support the most at this point, or is there other groups you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I mean, I love them also. Secular Pro-Life's my newest affiliation, and so I'm kind of the most excited about it right now. But I'm also, I've worked for years with Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. They do a lot of great work. And they similarly are a space for non-traditional pro-lifers who lean progressive. They are explicitly pro-LGBT and explicitly anti-racism and anti-carceral. They really do a lot of really cool work. They also are all about nonviolent direct action and the history of civil disobedience within protest movements and human rights movements. And so they do a lot of cool work. You should definitely check them out. That's Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, also known as POW. They have a lot of cool social media posts too, and they're they're very much in the real world, like in your face in the real world. So I love them. I love working with them. I've also on and off been involved with Rainbow Pro-Life Alliance, again, mostly online organization of LGBT folks opposed to abortion and who work to support pregnant women to help them choose life, or pregnant people, right? For the LGBT group. Rehumanize International is a group I used to work for. They are Consistent Life Ethic, and so same with Consistent Life Network, and so they are all about plugging people in who oppose abortion for the same reasons that I did, because they oppose the death penalty, and because they oppose war, and because they oppose human trafficking and violence against human beings in all stages of life and in all circumstances. But yeah, I mean, there's a million pro-life organizations, and I love most of them. There's some that are favorite, but basically, and also if you're listening to this and you're like a Christian conservative and you're like, I don't want to get involved with, those wackos, get involved in Sidewalk Advocates for Life of America or Students for Life. There are plenty of Christian conservative pro-life groups. And if that's where you fit in, that's where I want you. Go work there and work within your community. Because we also know that the majority of women who get abortions do identify as Christian. This is not necessarily just a problem for me and my community of atheists and progressives. There are plenty of Christians, Catholics who get abortions and who need support within their own community. And so, if you have a problem with abortion, don't just think that or post it online every once in a while. Go do something about it. Get involved in your community in real life to help women in need and to work to criminalize this barbaric practice.
I think I forget what YouTube video I was watching, but I think it was from like July of 2023, and you seemed like you were pretty big on if you you can work with people of different opinions because you got the one goal to focus on, but if you can't do that, there's other groups out there that you can find a home with just fine. So it seems like you want to work, you're willing to work with people who you don't completely politically align with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have to, and I wish that everyone felt that way. Because, I've sort of had the opposite happen to me where I've, I tried to, my organization Rehumanize tried to sponsor like an anti-war march. And we got banned from it. They said, no, we don't want you there. And like, we were volunteering, we were doing stuff. We didn't just put our name on the banner, we were actually like organizing it and doing stuff. And then someone found out we were anti-abortion. It's not like we hide it. It's like on the first page of our website. And the organizers voted to ban our organization from the march. And to me, that is just so counterproductive if your goal is to end war, right? Like if I'm a child in Palestine or a child in Iraq or wherever I am, I don't give a shit who is working to end my suffering. I want my suffering to end. And the same is true with abortion. You know, if people take an issue with working with secularists or gay people or like whatever, do you think the unborn baby cares if the person who saved them, like, you know, is a Democrat or believes something different than you? Or like, especially when it's just like Christians don't want to work with other types of Christians. It's like, be for real. Like the house is on fire. Are you asking every firefighter that goes in what church he goes to? Or are you recognizing this is an emergency? We need all hands on deck to save lives. And so I'm willing to work with anyone. Not everyone's always willing to work with
No,
me.
I hear you.
But to me, I feel like, all right, if you're mad about me, like if you don't like me for whatever reason, go do better than me. Go save babies with whoever you like to work with. And I wish we could work together. Maybe we'll collaborate one day. But if you hate me so much that you're mad that because some people are mad that when I get platformed, right? And it's like, well, then go do something that's worth platforming. Like go do it. I encourage you to do that. I would love to not have to do this. I would love if Christian conservatives did such a good job of eliminating abortion that I did not have to care about this. But they haven't yet. And so I have to be here. And I feel as though I have to mobilize other people like me to get in there and do what it takes to save lives and help women.
Right on. Is there anything that you feel like I haven't asked you about that you feel is pretty important that I should have asked you about?
I spoke briefly about the law that I was charged under being unconstitutional. And I just want to clarify that. So this law, it's called the FACE Act. It's Freedom to Access Clinic Entrances. And what it does is basically hyper criminalize protests at abortion clinics, or any way that someone interferes with someone seeking an abortion. And so, like I said, in any other context, a nonviolent sit-in is trespassing. It's a slap on the wrist. And, I'm not saying it's like cool to, well, actually, I am saying it's cool to trespass, but I'm not saying it necessarily should be legal to trespass. Like, I understand that part of nonviolent civil disobedience is that you might face jail time, and you might, it's part of the message that we're willing to take a risk and sacrifice our freedom and our safety and our livelihood to show you that your child has worth. Like, it is both an act of actively saving an individual human being who is scheduled to die on a particular day, but it's also the symbolic message that your child has so much value to us that we're willing to risk our freedom. So can you be willing to put up with this pregnancy, and we'll help you along the way? That said, I don't think that there should be this double standard where other protest movements get things like trespassing charges and we get charges like the FACE Act and conspiracy to deny civil rights that led to a nonviolent protest leading to up to 11 years in federal prison. Like it's unreasonable. And I think that the Supreme Court has already ruled on the constitutionality of the FACE Act. However, that was prior to the Dobbs decision. In the past, the argument was made that the federal government has a right to legislate and hypercriminalize particular actions because abortion is a federal right enshrined in the Constitution. The Dobbs decision made it very clear that there is no such right, and there never has been. And so the FACE Act cannot be constitutional. And so that is why I think that this appeal is so important, and that we're still trying to work to get it ruled unconstitutional by the courts so that this can never come up again. And I'm hoping that that moves forward. But in the meantime, we don't need the courts to repeal it. We have a Republican trifecta of people who are supposedly pro-life. We can get this done now. We can get the FACE Act repealed. And I think that that should be the next step. I would love for the court not to have to rule on this, because the law is just stricken down the way it's supposed to be by the legislature. And so right now, a lot of people, particularly Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, they have a page, I think it's just like their website /repeal face, or so if you go to palnow.org, paaunow.org, there's a webpage on there for getting plugged into the movement to repeal the FACE Act. We've had some success with getting bills introduced, or promises to get bills introduced, and hearings on this issue. And there's been a couple of good congressmen who have spearheaded those actions, but we really need to put pressure on them, and we need to put pressure on the mainstream Republicans to get on board with this as a pro-life priority, because we don't want a situation where 4 years from now, there's someone else in the White House who is going to pick up these same types of prosecutions on people like us who do intentionally engage in nonviolent civil disobedience. But some of the people who were pardoned along with me weren't involved in this protest. They were involved in peaceful sidewalk advocacy, which is totally legal. And the Justice Department, because they were run by a pro-abortion zealot, targeted them for what was literally just free speech activity. And so we don't want that to be able to happen again. And so the ask is to repeal the FACE Act through Congress. And I'm very hopeful that that can move forward, but I'm looking for help. So talk to your congressman, work to get it repealed, along with all the other asks you're making, like actually ban abortion, not just legislate it out of existence, barely. But so that's what I'm doing moving forward, working both to help moms and babies feel as though abortion is not their only option, and to work to get these laws on track to respect free speech rights and to promote protests, because nonviolent civil disobedience has been used in every civil rights, human rights movement throughout history that's been successful. And I don't think that we want to live in a country that, even if you disagree with me about abortion, that people doing what is essentially free speech activity are facing years and years in federal prison.
Right on. What would you have a message if someone was listening and they were considering abortion? What would be your message to them right now?
Contact me. I'll do whatever you need. My Twitter is @HerbGeraghty. Send me a message. I will get you connected to whatever you need to be able to either raise that child or continue the pregnancy and choose adoption if that's what you want. If you don't want to reach out to me because you think I'm a weirdo, that's fine too. But I would recommend letthemlive.org. That was the organization I plugged earlier. They are my absolute go-to, and they'll work with anyone, at least I'm pretty sure, absolutely in the United States, probably internationally too, but don't quote me on that. But basically, almost every community has a pregnancy resource center. If you just Google those words, pregnancy resource center, you will find people there who are able to help you and your baby. I can't vouch for all of them, but I've been to many and I've worked with many. And for the most part, they are run by a lot of really caring people who will help you with whatever you need to be able to continue this pregnancy, and to support you with whatever you need. And so reach out to them, reach out to me, reach out to Let Them Live. You and your baby have worth. If people are telling you, or you're feeling like this is your only option, there's nothing pro-choice about that. What the abortion clinic is doing is trying to sell you an abortion. They are a $1 billion industry that you do not need to support because there are other options. And so just please, or if you don't want to reach out to those people, give yourself a week to think about it. Do not feel rushed into this decision, because so many people who live with regret for the rest of their lives and mourn their aborted children for the rest of their lives felt as though they had to make this decision immediately and they had no time. And that is just not true. Give yourself a day to think about it. If you have an appointment, you don't need to keep it. You can go back another day. But please, for yourself and for your baby, do not make that choice.
I don't know if this is a question you can answer, and I'll probably regret asking it, but maybe someone needs to hear it. What do you know what they do with the aborted babies?
So it depends on the clinic. In many places, they're considered, typically are considered medical waste. They are disposed of in that way. It's actually funny you asked that. So the abortion clinic that we were at the day that we performed this rescue and we were charged under, that is Washington Surgery Clinic in DC, which is run by Cesare Santangelo. And they're not just an abortion clinic. They are particularly a late-term abortion clinic. They specialize in post-viability elective abortion. So babies who are able to survive outside the womb, and killing them for elective reasons. Like, we're not talking about, rape, incest, life of the mother. It's, I don't want to be pregnant anymore. So, I mean, this is a particularly, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, or you have conflicting opinions about abortion, like, most people understand that a 26-week-old infant, people are born at 26 weeks and live totally normal lives, should not be dismembered. And so you can go on PAL's website too, and see some of the victims of Cesare Santangelo, and what they look like. I mean, it's completely horrific. In that case, we know that they have a contract with Curtis Bay Energy, which is weird, right? Curtis Bay Energy. Why would an abortion clinic have a contract with an energy company? And that is because Curtis Bay does something that I actually find really interesting, and I vaguely would be supportive of if it wasn't for the murder, which is that they take medical waste and through whatever process they have, they convert it to a renewable energy. And so when we're talking about, like, remnants of a surgery, or, whatever regular medical waste they have, like, that's an interesting way to get energy, whatever. It powers much of Baltimore. Cool. In this case, we know that they have a contract with this abortion clinic and with other abortion clinics. And so for the victims of Cesare Santangelo, in many cases, what's happening to them is that their bodies are being burned for fuel, for a private company's profits, which is incredibly disturbing. For more information, I know when I say that, it sounds like such an insane claim that I think if I wasn't involved in this work, I'd be like, okay, you're like a conspiracy theorist, like psycho. That's nice that you believe that, but let's talk about real things. But I swear to God, that is the case. That you can look, all the receipts on that are on PAL's website. If you go to that palnow.org/justice for the five, I think. palnow.org/justice for the five, or if you Google justice for the five, it'll come up. But yeah, I mean, it's horrifying. But yeah, in general, these babies' bodies are treated like trash at best. At worst, it's I don't know. It's too disturbing to even get into. But you can look into what some abortionists have done with the remains of their victims, and I mean, it's disgusting. It's disturbing. And I find it interesting that a lot of pro-choice people will agree with me on that. Like, there have been laws passed that have been supported by some pro-choice people that these bodies should not be treated as waste. They should be respectfully cremated or even buried. Treated as the remains that they are, not just trash. And if you feel that way, or if you feel that way about a pregnancy loss in your life, if you know someone who has had a miscarriage, and who has mourned that loss, and who many people bury the remains of miscarried and stillborn infants, if you feel as though that makes sense, why would you feel any differently about an aborted child at that same age? And if you do feel like their remains deserve respect, you should probably feel as though their life deserves respect too.
I don't know if you are like a big numbers guy, so I don't know if you'd have these or an idea of this, but do you have any idea what the ratio is on the people that don't end up not having an abortion? Do they put it up for adoption, or do they mainly keep the kid for themselves?
So yeah, that's what's interesting. I think a lot of people who are not involved in pro-life work have this idea that they often just say, well, just place the child for adoption. But very interestingly, that's not what happens. When people choose life, they choose to raise the child. Some people still place children for adoption, but ultimately, what I have found and what the statistics show is that people are not getting abortions because they don't want children. Of course, that happens sometimes. There are people who just are like, I don't want to be pregnant, I don't want children, whatever. The vast majority of people, and this is according to Guttmacher, pro-abortion sources, they're doing it because they feel as though they don't have the resources they need to raise a child. And if they did have those resources, they would choose life. And so that's what I always say, that there's nothing pro-choice about the pro-abortion movement. They recognize that. Like Guttmacher, they were formerly the research arm of Planned Parenthood. They display that proudly, like that we helped these women get abortions because they didn't have the resources they need to have their child. Where I read that and I say, well, what if they did? Like this is, I'm involved in progressive causes. Like this is the richest country in the world. We have the ability to meet the needs of our community members. And when it's life or death, I don't care what you feel about taxes. Like we can meet those needs. If I support government programs to meet those needs, and I'm pretty unapologetic about it. But if you want to be a right-wing libertarian guy, go ahead and donate yourself. Make it happen. Meet those needs yourself, and I'm on board. I would love, I would love it. And so there's nothing pro-choice about the current abortion industry. I mean, it is an industry. It is a profit-hungry, multi-billion-dollar industry that exists to profit off of the suffering of women and the murder of children. And so, yeah, the vast majority of people, that is not answering your question, but it does, because the vast majority of people who consider abortion and then choose life choose to raise their children. And that just goes to show this is not a matter of people who hate kids. People are not getting abortions flippantly because people on social media post memes like fuck them kids, but like when you're actually outside of an abortion clinic and talking with people who get abortions, they see this as a tragic, very upsetting, very disturbing experience, a violent experience done to their bodies. Of course, that's not everyone, but the majority of people say, and the pro-abortion movement acknowledges it, that it's because of resource reasons, not because of some ideological reason that they don't think that fetuses are people. Like many people who get abortions believe that abortion is murder, and they just feel like they don't have another option. And I think that is disgusting and it breaks my heart. And so I want to do everything I can to change that reality.
When you're talking with these women, do you ever really discuss like the long-term effects or regret, stuff like that?
Yeah, sometimes if it comes up, really when I'm talking to someone who is considering an abortion, I'm asking questions more than I'm talking. Like, why are you making this choice? Why do you feel like this is your only choice? And I respond and I try to help them however I can. But yeah, no, I'll point them to women I know. A lot of the people who do sidewalk advocacy outside of clinics have experiences with pregnancy loss and abortion, and that's what gets them so worked up about this issue. And so I often point people to, look at the stories of women who have chosen abortion. And I think that is, I hope, and I think I've seen often is an effective way to at least get people to think about it. There's people who treat abortion because it is legal and because it's often taxpayer funded. They treat it as this flippant decision that just get an abortion. You can just get pregnant again. And it's easy to say that when you're not the person pregnant. But a lot of pro-choice rhetoric relies on that. And so, yeah, I think that if anything, pointing out how people regret abortions, that this is not just a simple choice or a simple medical procedure like something else. It at least gives people time to think about it. Even just being outside the clinic. A lot of people do 40 Days for Life. That's a Christian organization that organizes prayer outside of abortion clinic throughout the year. And so most people involved in 40 Days for Life, they're not actually speaking to the women going in. They're just out there praying. But we know that just having a presence out there, and I don't believe in the power of prayer too much. But having a presence out there shows the people going in, oh wow, like maybe I should think about this. Like there are people who care enough about what I'm doing here to waste their Saturday morning standing in the rain praying the rosary out here. Like maybe I should think about this. And so like if you hear me and you're like, I'm so shy, because like don't get me wrong, it's so embarrassing to be on a street corner screaming like a crazy person. It's like, and I don't scream, but sometimes you gotta project your voice.
Right.
And it definitely is embarrassing. Like I've been out, like I lived in the downtown neighborhood where an abortion clinic was, and like so many times people who I know from my regular life would see me out there and be like, what are you doing? And like I get it, like it's tough to be out there sometimes. And so if you feel like you can't do that, go out. If you're Christian, go out there and pray, and that can have an impact on someone just taking an extra 5 minutes to think about if this is the decision that they want to make. But I highly recommend getting involved in sidewalk advocacy, though. If there is an abortion clinic anywhere near you, there's a lot of resources online. Sidewalk Advocates of America has a lot. Rehumanize International has a lot. POW has trainings too. It is if you are upset about abortion, it is the number one way to actually prevent individual abortions from happening. Like when I say I'm against abortion, it's easy to think of it as some, just another political issue. It's another thing I believe. But what it is the taking of individual lives on an individual day at an individual place that's likely in your city or, your general geographic area, and you can do something about it. And I strongly recommend people get involved in that kind of in-person interception in the culture of death.
Well, Herb, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today.
Yeah.
I should ask you one other question that popped in my head. Do you consider Plan B abortion, or do you consider that contraceptive?
Contraception. So this is more complicated than I want to get into, but also it was nice because my whole life I've been plugging them anyway, and now I actually work for them, so it's like I'm kind of getting paid too, so that's great. But Secular Pro-Life has a lot of resources on that. The pro-life movement is somewhat divided on Plan B. Because there's controversy over whether it works simply to prevent ovulation, which would make it contraception and birth control, or if it could potentially have abortifacient effect. Secular Pro-Life has done some good research and has kind of synthesized a lot of the actual medical and scientific research out there. And I think that they make a compelling point that Plan B is not abortifacient. And so for me, there's no moral question about it. Similar to condoms or abstinence, it just doesn't make babies. And so I don't have a problem with it. I only have a problem if it's killing people. And so I recommend people kind of come to their own moral conclusion about that. I certainly am not coming for Plan B, especially in a world where it is legal in many places to kill viable, practically infants. I think that I have bigger fish to fry, and I am not. I don't think about Plan B too much, but I do recommend it. I think it's an interesting topic, and especially if you're interested in getting into the nitty gritty science stuff, check out Secular Pro-Life's resources on Plan B. I think there's just you'll find it if you go to the website.
Do you want to plug your ex at all?
Yeah, sure. I know. I still call it Twitter because I was in prison the whole time it became
right
on. Yeah, it's just my name, Herb Geraghty, at Herb Geraghty. If you see my name on there, spell
right
it. You'll find
I'll put it
me.
in the description too. But
thank you.
Any other
Secular Pro-Life X is just at Secular Pro-Life. So
right on.
Find them there.
Any other organizations that you're a part of that you want to plug real fast or anything?
Yeah, I think of everyone's X. So POW, Progressive Anti-Abortion Access, or Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. They are POW now, so PAAUNOW. Rehumanize International is our Rehumanize INTL. You'll find it if you type in Rehumanize. I think that's it. Rainbow Pro-Life Alliance. It's another one. Just type it in. You'll find it.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about your story and pro-life, why people should be pro-life.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a good discussion, and I enjoyed it, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, have a good night.
You too.